Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. I'm Huck. Today I'm doing a review for Beautiful by Juliet Marillier. This is a 2019 release that came out a few months ago, and it's only available as an audiobook through Audible, so I had to do the Audible free trial just to listen to this book. But Juliet Marillier is one of my favorite authors, and I've really enjoyed this book, so I'm excited to talk to you about it today. So this is a retelling of East of the Sun, West of the Moon, but from a slightly different perspective. In East of the Sun, West of the Moon, usually we are following the young girl who is taken by a bear, and then in the story she later has to save him from trolls. But in this story, we are following the same story, but from the perspective of the troll princess. And in this one, our main character, Hulde, is a princess of the trolls, but she doesn't even really know that she is the princess of trolls. She's been very, very sheltered. Her mother, the queen, has kept her very sheltered and given her very little information about the world, even like herself and just who she is. The queen has kind of orchestrated this whole situation in which the man who is actually a bear is going to be forced to marry the princess. So the main character, Hulde, actually has no idea that any of this is happening, and she is also kind of like a victim in the situation. Her mother, the queen, is extremely cruel to her, and as I said, keeps her very isolated. She isn't even allowed to have any kind of friends, and so she has kind of a sad existence at the beginning of this story. So the story does start out with this retelling of East of the Sun, West of the Moon, but from the troll princess's perspective, but then it pretty quickly kind of moves on past that and expands into a larger story, which is about Hulde really finding herself. She kind of goes on an adventure and she finds out more about her people and the country and really who she's going to be. And of course, along the way on her adventures, she makes friends, she makes some unlikely friends, and they help her to figure out who she wants to be and also what kind of queen she wants to be. As a character, I enjoyed Hulde. She does start out very naive and kind of childish sometimes, but in this case it didn't bother me because there was an explanation as to why. Because her mother had sheltered her to a point of cruelty and really purposefully kept her so naive. So Hulde, she is a very naive character, but she does also grow a lot along the way and learn a lot over the course of the story, which I always love any character development, character growth. So I really appreciated that even though she starts out very naive and childish, she does grow over time, although she never quite loses her like childlike wonder and some kind of childish ways of thinking about things, but overall I enjoyed her as a character. Of course, there's also a romance in the story for Hulde, which she discovers along the way, and it's actually kind of like a love V, in which she has two male love interests, but it's actually maybe like a polyamorous relationship, kind of. They didn't use exact like terminology for it because it's a fantasy. Both of the male love interests like know about each other, and she has a relationship with both of them at the same time, and like everybody knows about it and is fine. But the two male love interests are not romantically involved with each other. They're only romantically involved with Hulde, which is good though, because I'm pretty sure that the two male love interests are brothers. The only other thing about the romance is that I do feel like one side of the romantic like V was definitely more well developed than the other one. There was one that was definitely, they put in more time into developing the connection between these two characters and like why they liked each other, why they worked well together and all of that. And then there was the other one that they were kind of like, oh yeah, and he's cool too. So I definitely wish that there had been more of a balance between the two sides of the love V. But the story had a very fairy tale feel to it. I think that's something that Juliet Marillier brings to a lot of her stories, a lot of her fairy tale retellings and things like that, is there is this kind of intangible fairy tale feel to it, even when the story moved past the fairy tale retelling portion of the story and kind of onto new territory. It still maintained that very fairy tale-esque feeling. Sometimes it had fairy tale logic to it, which, like, things kind of come back around in a way. I also think that because it has this very fairy tale feel, it worked really well as an audiobook, because fairy tales are stories that translate very well to being told to somebody, to being spoken and told in that way. And so having it as an audiobook, so the story is being told to you, I think worked really well, actually. Although I still wish that I could get it in physical copy so that I could have it on my shelf with all of my other Juliet Marillier books. I do think it worked really well as an audiobook. The only downside of it being an audiobook, to me at least, was that there are a lot of names that start with S, and it did get a little bit confusing to tell the characters apart when there were so many S names that I felt sounded kind of similar. But overall, I really enjoyed this book, and it's just a very sweet story, so I gave it 4 stars. So that is all for my review of Beautiful by Juliet Marillier. Thank you all for watching, and until next time, bye!